Big game in the Pac-12 this Saturday, and who else to break it down but Pac-12 Pate. Utah hosting USC. This is an 8 o'clock Eastern time kickoff on Big Fox. It's a huge 2-week stretch for the Pac-12. Really 3 weeks, because you had Utah at UCLA last week, okay? Now this week, we got USC at Utah. And then next week, we got UCLA at Oregon, and those, in some form or fashion, are the 4 best teams out there right now. So there's this little round robin kind of going on as we speak in the Pac-12 that's deciding the hierarchy. It's not deciding the conference title race quite yet, because remember, they're not doing the division thing out there. They're just doing the 2 best teams. Is there separation? That's what we can start to ask. Is there a solidly best team in the Pac-12? That loss that Utah had this past Saturday, or Friday, I think it was, kind of turned this game into a do-or-die feel for Utah. Now, statistically, I don't quite know if they're done if they lose this game. I'm talking about the Pac-12 championship picture, but it feels that way. We've had October 15th circled for a while, and this is one of the reasons. Not surprisingly, you've got to look at the quarterback position. Sometimes you can overthink the room. No need to do that. Quarterback position goes a long way in deciding this one. You're seeing more and more teams out on the West Coast start to show zone looks defensively to USC. And there's a good reason for that. Caleb Williams is the best quarterback statistically in the Pac-12 against man coverage. He is the worst quarterback statistically in the Pac-12 against zone coverage. Now, you, in your very, very common sense approach and logic-based approach to things, might think, oh, Utah's about to throw a ton of zone at Caleb Williams Saturday, right? Go Utes. They probably won't, because they never do. They didn't last week. They probably won't this week. I'll get to that in just a second. Cam Rising, meanwhile, the Utah quarterback, in this matchup last year, played the best game of his year. 306 total passing yards. He had 4 total touchdowns. So he lit USC up last year. Of course, it's a totally different USC team this year, but some things to keep in mind. Now, here's the thing. What I just said about Caleb Williams and less desirable results against zone, it bothers me sometimes when something's that clear on paper, and yet you think that you've got your way of doing things and your system and your philosophy, and you won't bend it for anything. It's time to bend that a little bit for Utah this Saturday. It's as simple as that to me. You've got to put your team and your players in the best chance and best position to win. And the best position to do that is maybe dusting off a few pages in that defensive playbook you don't normally use, because it may mean that's what it takes to put yourself in the best position to win. You've also got to, at this point, do the obligatory check-in on the USC turnover margin, because USC has led the nation, it feels like, all year in turnover margin. And, yep, there they are, still number 1 in overall turnover margin. Now, just like I talked about with Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, eventually, doesn't it have to happen? Doesn't there come a week where they're -2 in turnovers? Does that lead to a loss? Not automatically, but it's a lot more likely than being on the plus side of things. If it's going to happen, doesn't it feel like this is the environment for it to happen in? Desperation, which I think Utah has in plentiful supply, is a very, very powerful motivator. Conversely, USC has not tasted that blood yet. And I know it's always unpopular to talk like that, but then again, how many times have you as a fan watched your team lose and then go on to do great things and said at the end of the year, in retrospect, it's a good thing we lost that game. We probably ultimately don't become the finished product that we became if we don't lose and have some adversity along the way. Well, that's fun to say after you lose. No one roots for the loss so that they can gain the education through adversity. I think Lincoln Riley knows there's probably a little bit of a bubble about this team that will get popped. I mean, USC will get popped somewhere along the way. Doesn't mean they're not a good team. It's just they're probably going to have a loss somewhere on this schedule. The sooner it happens, the better. Again, it sounds like I'm telling you he's rooting for them to lose. No, that's stupid. What I'm saying is I think internally they grasp they still have limitations, they still have weaknesses, they still have flaws, even though the record indicates to you they don't. So I think Lincoln Riley and his staff are probably a lot more realistic about where they stand right now than some of the national punditry. And you know how rarely I use that word. If you are into halves in betting, quarters and halves, I want to arm you with the following information. USC is number 1 in the Pac-12 in second half scoring differential. They are plus 77 in the second half. Utah is number 1 in the Pac-12 in first half scoring differential. They are plus 80. So if you want to just go ahead and save yourself the time and blindly bet Southern Cal second half, Utah first half, you be my guest. I don't think it'd be the worst idea in the world. Let's take a look at what the model thinks. The Vegas number currently, Utah. Yes, 2-loss Utah. Favored by 3.5, basically home field advantage. And that is, again, odds makers telling you, if you just shave out the 3.5, those teams are equal on a neutral field. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Well, in rankings world, it doesn't. In power ratings world, it does. The model likes Utah -5. I agree with the model. I think this is the week that USC goes down. I'm going to take Utah to win. They are the far more desperate team, back against the wall, wounded animal mode, all that stuff. And I think Utah is going to win and cover. The current odds to win the Pac-12 championship, before we move on, USC plus 180, Oregon plus 190, it's UCLA plus 230, and then Utah, kind of I guess I would say a distant fourth at the moment at plus 600. If they win this game, then I think you have that kind of accordion effect. Right now, stretched out a little bit, it would just compact back in, and you would just, those middle two teams are off this week, and then they play each other next week. So over the coming 2 weeks, starting Saturday into next Saturday, a lot will start to take shape out on the West Coast. Really looking forward to that game. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video, and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me, that's how we keep this entire thing free.